Chevra, how are you? A good night of Shabbos. I hope everyone's gesund, stark, und freilich, begashmis und beruchnis. Yesterday was Chofov, the Yortzeit Hilul of the Rebbe's father. May his chus be a gute better for ganz Kal Yisrael. Every single Jew should be helped in every single way, in any area of his life which needs an upgrade and improvement. About Chofov, one of the things that the Rebbe says is that it's Arboim Yoim Koidim Yitzilas Havlad. We say that 40 days before the child is born, that's when the child is formed. The beginning of the forming, whether it's a female or a male. So, the Tzilas Havlad, the Rebbe says, also goes on Rosh Hashanah, when the first man was born. Arboim Yoim, before Aleph Tishrei, when Adam Rishon was born, is Chofov. So that means we have to start preparing ourselves for the new year from Chofov. So before we start, first we'll give charity. Stokas, as the war started, Stokum Mekarevis is a Gula Mashiach should come now. Then we'll say a pasuk from Tillim, which is going to be about the theme we're going to talk about. And that pasuk is, there's many psukim that are similar. The pasuk says, Mikol Oy, Kapitel Kuf Yutes, pasuk Kuf Aleph. Mikol Oyrach Ro Kolisi Ragloi Leman Eshmed Varecho. I have restrained my feet from every evil path so that I might keep your word. What's interesting is that we say, I have restrained my feet from every evil path so that I might keep your word. Does it begin with the feet? Or does it end with the feet? Is the fact that I am in the right place something which represents my totality? It started from my heart, but therefore my feet are in the right place. Or sometimes we say that a person decides to be in the right place and the rest will follow. Put yourself in the right place and the rest will follow. And in truth, this is such a fundamental subject. When we speak about life, I would think any mature person, any serious-minded individual, thinks about growth, thinks about development, thinks about change. A person wants to change for the better, obviously. If a person doesn't want to change for the better, then he's not really a person. A human being is meant to grow. A human being is meant to reach higher. A human being is meant to aspire. Ruach ha'adam, the spirit of man, ha'eli l'mayla. Not like an animal that's head is downward and only sees the ground. A human being has a concept of higher, to aspire. So, we spoke about change, that sometimes there's the inside-outside approach and sometimes there's the outside-inside approach. I don't want to go over things that we spoke about many times. The outside-inside approach means we begin from conduct, machshava dibur ma'isa, simple Shulchan Aruch. This is the code of conduct. That's the outside-inside approach. And in Judaism, in Yiddishkeit, this is the main fundamental point. Ha'odam nimshech acha poloisav is the famous vart from the Chinuch. Man is drawn after his actions, that through your actions you develop character. Hergel nasa teva. But then there's what Chassidus emphasized and came along to emphasize also, which is called Avodah Pnimis, inner character development, working on your mind, meditation, understanding, working on your heart, your emotions, your feelings, your identity, your personality, who you really are. So it's not something that's only happening on the outside, externally and superficially, but it's really you. So there's an advantage, like I said. Sometimes we have the inside-outside approach, and sometimes we have the outside-inside approach, and both are effective, and we're meant to have both going on. So what we're going to talk about today is a subject that I find actually very, very fascinating. When it speaks about a change, and a person wants to make a change, or we can call it regret. There's two ways to look at the situation when a person has a regret. Is it sincere? How many times does a person say, sorry, I apologize, and then they do the same thing again. So again, we can go deeper and deeper into this. Could you say that when they had regret, it was a regret, but then later on they were weak, and the power and the earnestness and the seriousness of the regret weakened? Or did it mean that it wasn't really a serious regret to start with? If it was a really powerful conviction at the beginning, then it would continue later. Mitchilosoi, at the beginning, at the outset, it was weak. So I'm not sure I have the answers to those questions. But we'll speak about that subject today, because if we're talking about change, and we say, so I think we have to speak more in a tone of empowerment, like open up the doors, welcome change, and therefore speak about it, that it doesn't necessarily have to seem like it's a mountain that you have to climb. So what I'm going to say now comes from a sikh of the Rabbi in Chelik Lamed Dalet Parshas Eikev, where the Rabbi asks a klotz kasha. Again, I'm stripping it down to the bare minimum. If you want to look for the back and forth, the whole pilpul, see there. This week's Parsha talks about the Eibishter in Parshas Eikev, and it says that the Eibishter is one who lo yis upon him, he doesn't show favoritism, v'lo yikach sheichad, and he doesn't take a bribe. So the question is, and this is a klotz kasha, that actually we do find that the Eibishter takes a bribe. There's a Medrash Tillim, just one example, where on the Pasuk in Kapitel Yud Zayin, Pasuk Beis, it says that Mufanecha Mishpati Yetzei, Davar HaMelech asked Hashem, let my verdict come forth from before you. I want you, Hashem himself, to be the judge. Milfanecha mishpati yetzei, einecha terzena meisharim. Let your eyes behold uprightness. So there's a Medrash Tillim over here that goes like this. First I'm going to read it to you from the Medrash Tillim, the words, then I'll read you from an English translation. And the Medrash says that, the Medrash Tillim on this pasuk says that after David HaMelech asked to be judged by Hashem himself, the Eibishter says, Mufanecha mishpati yetzei. You want me to be the judge? Al chinam asisi Sanhedrin? For nothing I made a Sanhedrin? I have a court case, I have judges, I made judges. There's a system. You can't bypass the system and just ask that I should be the judge. Lech lod lefneim, go be judged before them. So David HaMelech says, but you gave them a commandment v'sheichel letikach, they're not allowed to take bribery. Avalata, but you, ata noitel sheichel, you do take bribery. Min harashayim b'olam hazeh, from the wicked in this world. And the bribery is tshuva ma'asim tevim. Tshuva. And Ma'asim Tevim, which over here means Ma'asim Tevim that comes permeated and saturated with the spirit of tshuva. Hashem takes his bribery. So first of all, we have one pasuk in this week's Parsha, which says clearly that Hashem doesn't take bribery. And then we have a Medrash based on a pasuk, and they're saying that that's the meaning of the pasuk, that David HaMelech is telling Hashem that he does take bribery. So first let's understand, what does it mean, obviously, that the Eibishter doesn't take bribery. So the Rambam says a very simple word, that, and this is important to know, this is the words of the Rambam. In Pirush HaMishnayos, in Pirkei Avos, there's a Mishnah that says that the Eibishter doesn't take bribery. And the Rambam says, Le'yikach sheichet means, ha-toivis k'mei sheyasa adam elef toivis v'ra achas. A person could have 1,000 good deeds and he does one thing wrong, he thinks it's like a game, like you play wait. Since the good deeds will overweigh the bad deeds, so therefore that's like a bribery. With the good deeds that I did, I can bribe him that he overlooks the bad thing. So the Rambam says, Shalayim chel Hashem mizbarach me'avei rahi l'roiv tevaisav. it's not going to make a difference even if you did all those kind deeds. The bad thing that you did is a separate thing and is counted. That's the point that the Rambam says, and that's what it means that the Eibush doesn't take a bribe. I just brought it down to understand what does it mean that the Eibush doesn't take a bribe. You can't play a game, a trick. I'll give you a big donation, and therefore you'll overlook the other things that I did wrong. So the Rebbe answers a very simple answer and a meridik answer. This is the crux of the Rebbe's answer, which goes together with another question we have to have. If you say bribe, that's why it's also problematic to say that the Eibusha takes a bribe, because the word itself, when we say bribe, means it's a bit dodgy. It's not straight. That's why we're calling it a bribe. So how does that work? We're saying David HaMelech says the Eibusha could be bribed through tshuva. So if it's let's say 100% straight, so what does it mean it's a bribe? What does it mean that it's a bribe? So the Rebbe explains like this. First I'll say the kernel of the idea, and then we'll elaborate a bit more. There's a difference between saying there's good deeds and there's bad deeds. There's a person, and the person's coming forth, and let's say he wants to make change, but a slight change, and he thinks that if he does this or that, he could maneuver around a bit, use some scheming or scamming or machinations, he'll be able to get away with certain things. No. There's a judgment on every single thing you did. What you did right, you get rewarded for. What you did wrong, there's consequences. That's what it means that the Eibusha doesn't take a bribe. But then there's tshuva. Tshuva means you're not the same person. Tshuva means there was a shift at the core. So it's not a bribe. I'll be nigla, in other words, we're calling it a bribe, the Eibush accepts that. But I'm saying is, that he accepts. Why? Because the Rambam says also, in Hilchos Tshuva, that what does it mean a person has to do tshuva? That when a person does tshuva, it's like he's a different person. That person who sinned doesn't exist anymore. He's gone. And then the Rambam brings the Lashon, I'll try to find it, I had it before. The Rambam writes down that what the definition of tshuva means, that the person who stands before you right now is not the same person. So that's a simple difference. When it comes to, when we say the Eibush doesn't take a bribe, that means that the person's changing, but it's not a change of kind, like it's a change of degree. When it's a change of degree, we have the same person, and therefore, we can't say that this overrides that, or that overrides that. But if we say that we're dealing with a different person, it's a different person. That person before, who did the thing wrong, doesn't exist anymore. Now, why is it called a bribe? Because outwardly, and this is the point, this is what I want to discuss here today, and I'm fascinated by this subject. Outwardly, it might seem like it's a very, very small thing. It's just a minute. Like sometimes you say, tshuva is b'shayt echad u'b'rig echad. And the Rebbe gets into the Sikha that when we speak about tshuva, like many levels in serving Hashem, avas Hashem, yiras Hashem, there's many, many different levels. So in tshuva, there's many, many different levels. There's tshuva mi-yira, there's tshuva mi-ava, there's tshuva mi-ava rabba. There's the highest level of tshuva is doinus nas lekazachis. There's tshuva which you say, you're healed, but you still have a scar. There's tshuva where it's as if you did nothing wrong. There's tshuva where it's now even better than you ever before, let's say. But then there's the nekuda, that even though outwardly, and this is what it means that Hashem accepts bribe, even if outwardly it seems like this is minor, like what you're stopping to do the wrong thing, similar to what the Alter Rebbe says, Azivas ached bilvad, put yourself in the right place. habol atayim miyad shabo. But really, it's like a hazaza atzmis. It's an essential shift. It's an essential movement. And this is the meaning and the chiddush when we say that Hashem accepts tshuva. So it's a phenomenal message to get right now, our boim yoim, koydim mitziris havlat, 40 days before Rosh Hashanah. And this is the message that we have to hear. And this is what Chassidus brings out and emphasizes many times. And I heard from Rabbi Yoel 2 explanations about this. One example he gave, these are examples of something that outwardly seems very slight, very small, very minor, very weak, but in essence, it comes from the most powerful source. This applies in many different areas in Chassidus and many different concepts. Mikoyach elyon hubo. Its manifestation might be small, but its source, it really reflects and is a manifestation of something so intense and powerful that permeates even such a situation. So one example he gave, which I only heard from him, which I like very much, is imagine a person who's lost at sea and he's in a sea and he fell off his ship or something, or his ship broke. He's been treading water for hours and hours and hours. Now it's a couple hours later. He's as weak as you can imagine. So weak that he can't even talk. That's how weak he is. Even more so to scream, Abba, Abba, Atzileni, Eibishter. He can't scream, he can't talk. If you saw him right now, it seems like even his hands are most of the time under the water. You don't see anything. He's going down. Now imagine this person who's going down. His head is already submerged. And then he picks up one finger that's sticking out of the water. Externally speaking, when you look at it, it seems like it's something that's weak, lame. But the truth is, Rabbi was saying that this expression of that finger comes from his essence, his core strength, from the deepest, powerful part of human achievement and human ability. That's the part of him that says, I'm not giving up. I'm still fighting. I ain't going down. I ain't going under. But all the strength that he has left in the physical sense, not in a spiritual sense, in a psychological sense, but physically is that finger sticks out of the water. But that finger represents a mighty hero, heroics, a gibor, a superman, super strength. And the same thing Rabbi said about, he was chazing a thing from the Rebbe once said by Fabringen, that we have something called stellen sich davenen. I'm a stell sich davenen. It's usually when you, some places it says when you put the gartel on. So the Rebbe once said, we have in davening, it says sulam mutzavat avarish migia shemaima. There are different steps. So there's from Baruch Shama till Baruch Hu is Psukkah de Zimmer, that's Elam HaYitzirah, then comes Birchas Chishmas Bria, then comes Shema Shmeneses Atzilas. So the Richok HaErech, the leap from Baruch Shama to Shmeneses is not as great, is not as powerful. The move. A decisive move, a shift. The move that's from Baruch Shomar, Hoidu, to Shmeneser is not as great as the move from Stellen sich davenen. What says I'm Stellen sich davenen? What's greater? When you go from 0 to 1, it's greater than going from 1 to 100. A Stellen sich davenen means let's get serious. I'm here. I'm present. 5 minutes ago, I was reading the New York Times or whatever it was. I was in Welt. I was involved in Shtusser. I was involved in a mundane reality, having thoughts about business or different worries about paying a mortgage or whatever it is. 2 minutes later, when I decided, it's the gehe ich stellen davenen, and let's say I put on my gartel, that move of a stellt sich davenen, I'm going to daven, represents the way I'm ripping myself away, uprooting my totality, and saying, here I am. Like what Rashi says on the words, Hineni. Hineni means I'm ready and prepared, but not my eyeballs are prepared, not my nose is prepared, not my mouth, not my legs, not my arm, my totality. My entire being is Hineni. Now, someone's going to look at somebody and say, especially when you learn about what happened during davening, where's he really holding now? Nowhere. He didn't start the journey. The plane, you could argue, the plane didn't start flying yet. You just put on the seatbelt, in a way. That's one way to look at it. But the other way to look at it is, no. In a certain sense, this is the greatest move. By the way, the Rebbe in the Sikh over there says something which I don't remember from any other places, which is a beautiful word. He says that when a person becomes a Baal Tshuva, what we're talking about over here, the Shoicha that the Eibishter accepts, it's similar to, like we say, Geir, Shenis Gair, Kikotten, Shenel Dami. What happens when a person's born? Listen to this. The first second of conception, everything happens. As we mentioned before, the Rebbe also brings it down. We don't even know if it's male or female according to Torah. So imagine the first moment of conception, when this person was conceived, and we're coming along and saying, that's it. That's the whole story. The rest is just development. Tisha Chadoshim bebet Naim. The rest of the pregnancy is just an extension, an expansion, as the fetus is growing and growing. But what's the main thing? Where did it all happen? When does it all start? And what does it really mean? The greatest accomplishment from the second of conception. That's what the Rebbe says in the Sikh over there. And therefore the Rebbe says, so the way the Eibishter looks at it, the way the Eibishter knows, and we're talking about the positive. So when this person comes along, whoever it is, and he says, Hineni, I'm ready, I want to change. So that in itself, when you say you want to change, the Eibishter is accepting it. And now, it's all good. Now, details. Does that mean that everything you did in the past is now fixed over? Not necessarily. That's a whole different discussion. That's talking about the Kunei Tshuva. And there might be things that are connected to Benad Mechaveri that you have to still take care of. But that doesn't take away at all from this discussion that we're saying right now, that what does it mean that you are now a Baal Tshuva? What does it mean now that you are a changed person? That's the subject matter of today. We're talking about a change. And the message you have to know, which you have to hear again and again, because I deal with students, and I'm talking from my own life. Most people have an issue. They think to themselves, they're never going to be 100% the way they're meant to be. I know this for myself. I remember when I thought that way. When I was 17, 18, 19, 20. I'm never going to be the way I'm meant to be, so why start? There's no hope. And a lot of people have the same thought. And the answer which is usually given is, take it day by day. Take it day by day. There's many other answers that you cannot imagine what you're accomplishing with one good deed. Yichud zel, mailo, nitzchi, leilam, voed. You have no idea what you're accomplishing with one deed. That's what Alter Rebbe writes in one place, that the Eibishter is enjoying the one mitzvah you did forever, for all of eternity. And Alter Rebbe also says in Perich of Zion about B'chol D'chiyah D'chiyah, every time you control yourself, you exercise self-discipline, U'b'chol D'chiyah D'chiyah, you cause the Eibishter such a pleasure, and you enhance His glory throughout all the world. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking now on a simple discussion about change and growth and development. And people think to themselves, I'm never going to be good at this, so to speak. Let's call it general. I'm never going to be good at this, so forget it. I'm throwing in the towel. Forget it. So what they have to remember is, that's the Eibishter accepts sheichet.